The auction of dignity. The Metropolitan Grand Hall glittered with the kind of wealth that most people only glimpsed in magazines. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors while society's elite mingled beneath soaring ceilings adorned with Renaissance-inspired frescoes. This was the annual Winter Gala, where millionaires and billionaires gathered to write checks that would ease their consciences while networking for their next big deal. Victor Ashford stood near the champagne fountain, his presence commanding attention without effort. At 35, he had built Ashford Enterprises into a corporate giant through calculated decisions and an iron will. His reputation preceded him, brilliant, ruthless, and completely emotionally detached. Business magazines called him the Ice King of Manhattan, and he wore the title like armor. His steel gray eyes surveyed the room with the detachment of a chess master evaluating pieces on a board. Women approached him constantly, drawn by power and wealth like moths to flame. He entertained their attention with practiced charm while mentally calculating which connections might prove useful later. Everything was a transaction. Everyone had a price. That was the fundamental truth that had guided him from poverty to penthouse, and he never forgot it. Across the expansive hall, Nora Bennett carefully examined a damaged oil painting that would be auctioned later that evening. At 28, she had devoted her life to art restoration, bringing beauty back to neglected masterpieces. Her work required patience, dedication, and an artist's soul, qualities that paid poorly in a world obsessed with profit margins. Tonight, she wore a simple navy dress borrowed from her roommate, working as a consultant to authenticate pieces for the auction house. The job barely covered this month's rent, but it kept her close to the art she loved. She tucked a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear as she made notes about the painting's condition. Her hands bore small scars from years of careful work, with delicate tools and harsh restoration chemicals. These hands had saved countless artworks from oblivion, though nobody here would notice or care. To these people, she was invisible, just another employee facilitating their entertainment. Victor noticed her precisely because she seemed so focused on her work, completely unaware of the social theater around her. While others performed and preened, she studied that painting with an intensity that intrigued him. He found himself watching the way her expression softened when examining the brushstrokes, the gentle reverence in her touch. Something about her genuine absorption in her task sparked his curiosity. He approached with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting whatever he wanted. "Beautiful piece," he commented, though his eyes remained on her rather than the painting. Nora glanced up, startled. She recognized him immediately. Victor Ashford's face appeared regularly in financial news. "Yes, it's a remarkable work from 1847, she replied professionally, turning back to her examination. The artist captured extraordinary emotional depth in the subject's eyes. "I'm more interested in your eyes at the moment." Victor's voice dropped to the smooth, intimate tone that usually made women blush. "You clearly have passion for your work. I wonder what else you're passionate about." Nora's expression cooled. She'd dealt with wealthy men at these events before, men who saw staff as available for their amusement. "My passion is art restoration, Mr. Ashford. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to complete before the auction begins." But Victor wasn't accustomed to dismissal. His ego, fed by years of people catering to his every whim, interpreted her disinterest as a challenge rather than a genuine boundary. He stepped closer, invading her space with calculated intent. "I'm hosting an after-party at my penthouse. Very exclusive. Very private. I'd like you to attend as my personal guest. Name your price. I'm sure we can reach an arrangement that benefits us both." The words hung in the air like poison. Nora's hand stilled on the painting as the full meaning of his proposition registered. She turned slowly to face him, her hazel eyes blazing with something Victor had rarely encountered. Righteous fury mixed with profound hurt. "You think I'm for sale?" Her voice shook, though whether from anger or pain, Victor couldn't tell. "You look at me and see what exactly? Someone so desperate, so worthless that she'd sell herself to a stranger for access to your wealth?" Victor opened his mouth to respond, but Nora wasn't finished. Tears gathered in her eyes, magnifying their intensity. "I work 3 jobs to support my dying father's medical care. I haven't bought new clothes in 2 years. I eat instant noodles 4 nights a week. But I have never, not once, compromised my dignity for money. How dare you assume you know anything about me? How dare you reduce me to a transaction?" A single tear escaped, rolling down her cheek. Victor watched it track across her skin, and something cracked in the ice that surrounded his heart. Her pain was real, raw, and entirely caused by his thoughtless arrogance. For the first time in decades, Victor Ashford felt genuinely ashamed. He began, but Nora cut him off. Save it. Go back to your world where everything has a price tag. Mr. Ashford, some of us still believe in things money can't buy. She turned away, carefully gathering her materials with trembling hands. Victor stood frozen as she walked away, her borrowed dress and careful dignity somehow more impressive than all the designer gowns in the room. Around him, several guests had witnessed the exchange, their whispers already spreading through the crowd. The Ice King of Manhattan had been publicly rejected, his proposition thrown back in his face. But Victor barely noticed the gossip. His mind replayed that single tear, the genuine hurt in her eyes, the strength it took for her to defend herself against someone with all the power in their dynamic. For the first time since building his empire, Victor questioned the fundamental principle that had guided his life. Perhaps not everything had a price. Perhaps he had been wrong about the nature of value itself. The thought terrified him more than any business deal ever had. The pursuit of something real. Victor couldn't sleep that night. Nora's tear-streaked face haunted him, along with her words about dignity and things money couldn't buy. He'd built his fortune on the belief that everything was negotiable. Everyone had their price. She'd shattered that certainty with a single honest reaction. The next morning, he did something unprecedented. He researched her. Not for leverage, but to understand. Nora Bennett, master's degree in art conservation, worked at Morrison Restoration Studio by day, taught art classes at a community center twice weekly, and took freelance authentication jobs like last night's gala. Her father, Thomas Bennett, was in hospice care with stage 4 cancer. Medical bills had devastated their family savings. Victor found himself at Morrison Restoration Studio 3 days later. The small workshop smelled of linseed oil and turpentine. Nora stood at a workbench, carefully cleaning a centuries-old portrait with cotton swabs in solution. She wore a paint-stained apron, her hair tied back, completely absorbed in her work. "We're close to walk-ins," she said without looking up. "I came to apologize." Victor's voice was quieter than she remembered. Properly this time, Nora's hands stilled. She turned slowly, her expression guarded. "Mr. Ashford, I'm working. I know. I'll wait." He settled onto a worn stool near the door. "Take your time." She stared at him, confused by his patience. The arrogant billionaire from the gala seemed replaced by someone almost humble. "Fine, but I'm not interested in whatever you're selling." "I'm not selling anything. I'm asking for a chance to understand who you are, the real you." Over the following weeks, Victor became a strange fixture in Nora's world. He appeared at her community art classes, sitting in the back watching her teach underprivileged children to paint. He showed up at the restoration studio with coffee, her exact order which he'd somehow learned. He never mentioned money or propositions. He just listened. "Why are you doing this?" Nora asked one evening as they walked through a light snow after her class. "You're Victor Ashford. You could be anywhere with anyone." "I've been everywhere and with everyone," he replied, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. None of it was real. "You're real, Nora. That terrifies and fascinates me in equal measure." Marcus Green had known Nora since college. He worked as an accountant at a nonprofit, steady and kind, everything Victor appeared not to be. He watched Victor's pursuit with growing concern and his own unspoken feelings for Nora. "He's playing a game," Marcus warned her over coffee one afternoon. "Men like Ashford don't change. They get bored and move on to the next challenge." "I know," Nora said, but her voice lacked conviction. She'd seen something in Victor's eyes when he watched her teach those children. Genuine wonder, as if he'd forgotten such simple beauty existed. Victor proved Marcus wrong through actions, not words. When Nora's art class lost funding, an anonymous donation appeared. When her father needed an experimental treatment insurance wouldn't cover, Victor pulled strings to get him into a clinical trial, refusing credit when Nora discovered the truth. "Why won't you let me thank you?" she demanded, cornering him outside the restoration studio. "Because that's not why I did it." Victor's gray eyes held hers. "I'm not trying to buy your affection, Nora. I'm trying to become someone worthy of it." But Nora's walls remained high, built from years of struggling alone and the fresh memory of his insulting proposal. Nora's hands trembled as she applied a butterfly bandage. You're changing your business model because of me? I'm changing because you showed me I was becoming a monster. His hand caught hers gently. Money built my empire, but it hollowed out my soul. You're teaching me how to be human again. She wanted to pull away to protect herself, but the vulnerability in his eyes held her frozen. This wasn't the Ice King of Manhattan. This was just a man, trying desperately to become better. I'm scared, Victor, she whispered. Scared of what it means if I let myself believe in this. Believe in you. Then be scared with me, he replied. I'm terrified every day that I'll slip back into who I was, that I'll lose you before I've even earned you. But you're worth the fear, Nora. You're worth everything. Marcus watched from across the street, his heart breaking as he recognized the truth he'd been denying. Nora looked at Victor the way Marcus wished she'd look at him, with hope beginning to crack through caution, with the dangerous possibility of love. When tears break through, steel winter deepened into February, and Thomas Bennett's condition deteriorated rapidly. Nora spent every spare moment at hospice, watching her father fade while trying to memorize every detail of his face, every story he told about her late mother, every piece of wisdom he offered. Victor had never met Thomas, respecting Nora's desire to keep that part of her life separate. But he noticed the exhaustion in her eyes, the way her hands shook when she tried to restore delicate paintings, the barely touched lunches he brought her. The call came during a Thursday evening art class. Nora's phone buzzed insistently until she finally checked it, her face draining of color. I have to go, she told the children, her voice barely steady. Continue practicing your landscapes. Victor, who'd been helping a shy girl mix colors, immediately stood. What's wrong? My father. They said I need to come now. The words cracked on the last syllable. I'll drive you. No, I can. Nora. Victor's voice was firm but gentle. Let me help, please. They rode in silence through darkening streets, Nora's hands clenched in her lap, her breathing shallow and rapid. Victor wanted to offer comfort but didn't know how. His own father had been a cruel drunk who'd abandoned the family when Victor was 12. He'd built emotional walls so thick that basic human connection felt like a foreign language. The hospice room was dim and quiet except for the rhythmic beep of monitors. Thomas Bennett lay pale against white sheets, his breathing labored. He'd been a literature professor before illness claimed him. A gentleman who'd raised Nora alone after her mother died in childbirth, filling their modest home with books and love. Nora collapsed into the chair beside his bed, taking his frail hand. Dad, I'm here. I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner. Thomas's eyes fluttered open, unfocused but searching for her voice. My brilliant girl, he whispered. Don't apologize. You've given me everything. Victor stood frozen in the doorway, feeling like an intruder on sacred ground. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without flinching, crushed competitors without remorse. But watching Nora's tears fall onto her father's hand undid something fundamental inside him. There's someone I want you to meet, Dad. Nora's voice shook. Victor Ashford. He's been helping me. Being a friend. Thomas's gaze shifted to Victor with surprising clarity. The man from the gala. She told me about you. Victor felt his throat tighten. Sir, I made a terrible first impression. Thomas finished, a ghost of a smile on his lips. But she also said you've been trying to fix it. That takes character. I don't deserve her forgiveness, Victor said honestly, surprised by his own candor. But I'm trying to become someone who might. Take care of her, Thomas whispered, his strength fading. She's stronger than she knows, but she shouldn't have to be strong alone anymore. Promise me. I promise. The words felt like a vow, binding and terrifying. They stayed through the night. Around 3 a.m., as Nora dozed in her chair, still holding her father's hand, Thomas passed quietly. The monitor's steady beep became a flat tone that pierced the peaceful silence. Nora jerked awake, immediately understanding. No, 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 no. Dad, please don't leave me. I'm not ready. I'll never be ready. Her voice rose to a keening wail that shattered Victor's carefully constructed emotional armor. She collapsed against her father's still chest, sobs racking her body with a grief so raw it filled the room like a physical presence. Victor stood helplessly, his usual confidence useless in the face of genuine human suffering. A nurse entered quietly to turn off the monitors, giving them privacy. Victor knew he should call someone, make arrangements, do something practical. But he couldn't move. He couldn't stop watching Nora's shoulders shake. Couldn't stop hearing her broken pleas for one more day, one more conversation, one more chance to say everything love required. Finally, Victor approached the bed. He knelt beside Nora's chair and wrapped his arms around her trembling form, pulling her away from her father's body and against his chest. She fought him at first, but he held firm, absorbing her anguish. "I can't do this," Nora sobbed into his shoulder. "I can't lose him. He's all I have, all I've ever had." "I'm here," Victor whispered, his own eyes burning with unfamiliar tears. "You're not alone, Nora. I swear you're not alone." They stayed like that until dawn broke through the window, painting everything in shades of gray and gold. Nora eventually quieted, her tears spent, her body exhausted. She pulled back slightly to look at Victor's face. Seeing it wet with tears, he didn't bother hiding. "You're crying," she said in wonder. "I didn't think I still could." Victor's voice was rough. "I haven't cried since I was a child. But watching you hurt, something broke open inside me, something I thought I'd buried so deep it couldn't be reached." Nora touched his face, tracing the path of his tears. In that moment, she saw past his wealth and power to the frightened boy who'd learned to armor himself against feeling anything. And he saw past her strength to the terrified woman who'd carried too much alone for too long. "Let me help with arrangements," Victor said gently. "Let me carry some of this weight. You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. Not because I'm trying to buy anything or prove anything. Because caring about someone means being there when everything falls apart." Nora nodded, too drained to argue. Over the following days, Victor handled logistics she couldn't face. Coordinating with the funeral home, managing insurance paperwork, ensuring Thomas's wishes were honored. He never made her feel indebted. He simply did what needed doing, then stepped back. The funeral was small but beautiful, held in the community center where Nora taught art. Students created paintings to display around Thomas's photo, splashes of color celebrating a man who'd believed in beauty and education. Victor stood in the back, watching Nora deliver her eulogy with quiet strength, her voice only breaking once. Afterward, Marcus approached Victor. "You love her," he stated rather than asked. "More than I thought myself capable of loving anyone," Victor admitted. "But she deserves better than what I've been, better than what I still am in so many ways." "Maybe," Marcus agreed, "but she's choosing you anyway. Don't waste that gift." That night, Nora appeared at Victor's penthouse, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. "I need you to understand something," she said without preamble. "My father's death has made me realize how short life is, how quickly we lose the people who matter. I can't waste time being afraid anymore." Victor's heart pounded. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I see you, Victor. The real you beneath the Ice King persona. The man who sat with me all night, who cried for my pain, who's been trying so hard to become someone better. I'm terrified of what it means, but I want to try. I want to see where this goes." Victor crossed the room in 3 strides, cupping her face in his hands. "Are you sure? Because once I have you, I won't let go easily. You've become essential to me, Nora. The only thing that makes any of this feel worthwhile." "I'm sure," she whispered. "My father told me you promised to take care of me. But I don't need you to take care of me, Victor. I need you to walk beside me as an equal. Can you do that?" "I'll spend every day learning how," he promised, and kissed her with all the desperate tenderness of someone finally finding home. Spring arrived with tentative warmth, and for 3 months Victor and Nora built something genuine. He learned to exist in her world, eating takeout on her apartment floor, helping frame children's artwork, discussing restoration techniques he didn't fully understand, but found fascinating because she loved them. She cautiously entered his world, attending business dinners where she felt out of place, meeting his associates who regarded her with barely concealed disdain, trying to navigate social expectations she'd never been taught. It wasn't easy. Their backgrounds created constant friction. Victor's instinct was to solve problems with money. Nora valued solving them through community and effort. His world moved at a cutthroat pace that exhausted her. Her careful, deliberate approach to restoration frustrated his need for immediate results. But they were trying, finding compromise in the spaces between their differences. Victor started volunteering at the community center, discovering satisfaction in teaching children about business and financial literacy. Nora accepted his help when her studio needed equipment upgrades, learning that accepting support wasn't weakness. Then Damien Cross entered the picture. Cross Industries had been Victor's primary rival for years. Damien was everything Victor had been before Nora, ruthless, calculating, convinced that victory at any cost was the only victory worth having. Their companies had clashed repeatedly over development projects, each trying to outmaneuver the other. The Bennett building had been in Nora's family for 3 generations. Thomas had owned it, renting apartments at below-market rates to artists and struggling families, believing that community mattered more than profit. In his will, he'd left it to Nora, trusting her to maintain his legacy. The building needed repairs Nora couldn't afford: new plumbing, electrical updates, roof replacement. She'd been slowly saving, working extra jobs, refusing to sell despite multiple offers. The building represented everything her father had believed in, everything she'd learned about prioritizing people over profit. Damien Cross saw opportunity. He bought the building's mortgage from the bank that held it, then immediately called the loan due in full. Nora had 30 days to pay $200,000 or lose her father's legacy to foreclosure. She sat in Victor's penthouse office, the foreclosure notice trembling in her hands. "I can't lose it," she whispered. "It's all I have left of him. All those families who depend on affordable housing. Where will they go?" Victor's jaw clenched as he read the notice. He recognized Damien's tactics immediately. This wasn't about the building's value. This was a calculated strike at Victor through the person he loved. Damien had researched Victor's relationship with Nora and found the perfect pressure point. "I'll write you a check right now," Victor said. "$200,000 is nothing. Consider it done." "No." Nora's voice was firm despite her tears. "That's exactly what I can't do. Accept your money to solve this. Don't you see? If I do that, I become what everyone already whispers about. The poor girl who trapped the billionaire, who used her father's death to manipulate you into saving her. I don't care what people say, but I do." Nora stood pacing. "My pride, my integrity, that's all I have, Victor. The moment I let you buy my problems away, I lose myself. I become dependent on you in a way that will poison everything between us." Victor felt frustration boiling over. "So you'd rather lose your father's legacy than accept help from someone who loves you?" "That's not pride, Nora, that's self-destructive stubbornness." "Maybe," she agreed, her voice breaking. "But it's my choice to make. You can't control this, Victor. You can't throw money at it and make it disappear. Some things I have to face myself." They argued for hours, the conflict exposing the fundamental tension in their relationship. Victor's instinct was to use his power and resources to protect what mattered. Nora needed to prove she could stand on her own, that she hadn't traded her independence for security. She left that night without resolution, the foreclosure notice still clutched in her hand. Victor stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights blur as rare tears of frustration filled his eyes. For all his wealth and power, he was helpless to save the woman he loved from pain. But helpless wasn't in Victor Ashford's vocabulary. If Nora wouldn't accept his money directly, he'd find another way. He spent the next week working angles, contacting historic preservation societies, arranging grants, researching loopholes in foreclosure law. He could manipulate the situation, pull strings behind the scenes, save the building without Nora knowing his involvement. The plan was perfect. Until Marcus called him. "I know what you're planning," Marcus said without preamble. "The preservation grant that suddenly became available. The anonymous investor interested in buying the building's mortgage back. That's all you, isn't it?" Victor saw no reason to deny it. "She won't lose that building. I won't allow it. You're doing exactly what she asked you not to do. You're controlling the situation, removing her agency, proving that you still see money and power as the solution to everything." "I'm protecting her." "No," Marcus said firmly. "You're protecting yourself from having to watch her struggle. You're making this about your need to fix things rather than respecting her right to make her own choices, even painful ones." The words hit like physical blows. Victor ended the call and stood in his office, staring at the files containing his manipulation plans. Marcus was right. He was doing exactly what he'd promised not to do, using his power to control outcomes, treating Nora's autonomy as less important than his need to solve her problems. For 3 days, Victor struggled with himself. His every instinct screamed to intervene, to use his resources to make this right, but he'd promised Nora he'd walk beside her as an equal, not above her as a savior. True love meant respecting her choices even when they terrified him. On the 4th day, with 1 week left before foreclosure, Victor made his decision. He called a press conference, something he rarely did. Reporters gathered in Ashford Enterprises' main conference room, curious about what the reclusive billionaire wanted to announce. "I'm here to address my rival, Damien Cross, publicly," Victor began, his voice steady. "6 months ago, I would have applauded his tactical brilliance in targeting the Bennett building. I would have recognized it as exactly the kind of ruthless move I made regularly, finding someone's weakness and exploiting it for strategic advantage." Cameras flashed as reporters scribbled notes. This was unprecedented. Billionaires didn't usually air their conflicts publicly. "But I've changed," Victor continued. "Someone extraordinary taught me that not everything is a transaction, that some things matter more than winning. The Bennett building isn't just real estate. It houses families, artists, people who contribute to our community in ways that can't be measured in profit margins. Damien, if your goal is to hurt me by destroying something Nora Bennett values, congratulations. You've succeeded. But you've also shown everyone exactly who you are, someone who weaponizes other people's livelihoods for corporate games." Victor paused, letting the words sink in. "I'm publicly offering to buy the building's mortgage from Cross Industries at twice what you paid for it. That's not a negotiation. It's a one-time offer. Take the profit and walk away, or reject it and prove that this was never about business, just cruelty." He ended the conference without taking questions. The media exploded with speculation. By evening, Ashford's Gross was trending. Public opinion swung heavily against Damien, painting him as a corporate villain targeting a grieving woman to strike at a business rival. Nora saw the press conference on the news at the community center. Her students gathered around, chattering excitedly about Mr. Victor standing up for you. She felt emotions warring inside her: gratitude, frustration, fear, and something that might have been love deepening into something more profound. She found Victor in his office that evening. "You promised not to interfere." "I didn't," he said calmly. "The offer is public. Damien can accept or refuse. But either way, he knows the world is watching. He knows that attacking you to get to me has consequences beyond business. I used my platform, not my money behind your back. I made my stance clear without removing your choice. But if he refuses, then we lose." Victor's voice was steady despite the pain in his eyes. "And I'll be here while you grieve, while you figure out next steps, while you rebuild. I won't save you, Nora, but I'll stand beside you through whatever comes. That's the only promise I can keep while still respecting who you are." Nora felt something crack open in her chest. This was love. Not the sweeping gestures of romance novels, but the daily choice to honor someone's autonomy even when it hurt. Victor had learned to sit with his own helplessness rather than imposing control. He'd chosen her dignity over his need to fix everything. "I love you," she said simply. "I should have said it before, but I love you, Victor Ashford." His eyes closed briefly, relief and joy washing over his features. "I love you too, more than I knew I was capable of loving anyone." They stood together at the window, watching the city lights, waiting to see what Damien would choose. For the first time in his life, Victor Ashford was at peace with uncertainty, because he wasn't facing it alone. Building something new, Damien Cross sat in his own office across town, watching Victor's press conference replay on multiple screens. His public relations team was in crisis mode. Calls were flooding in. Sponsors were threatening to drop partnerships. And social media had turned his name into a symbol of corporate greed. He'd underestimated Victor's transformation. The old Victor would have retaliated through business channels, would have struck back with equal ruthlessness. This public vulnerability, this willingness to potentially lose while taking a moral stance, it was a move Damien hadn't anticipated. More importantly, it was effective. The public outcry was damaging Cross Industries' reputation in ways that would take years and millions to repair. All over a building worth a fraction of what this PR disaster would cost him. Damien made the call himself. "I'm accepting your offer, Ashford." "Wire the money." "I'll transfer the mortgage." "Smart choice," Victor replied, his voice neutral. "Don't mistake the